Night shift security at this old building has exactly one hard rule. After midnight, the chapel is locked tight. No one enters, and no one is allowed inside. Yet every single night, at exactly 2:46 a.m., a prayer begins to echo from the other side of those doors. In a structure made of heavy stone, sound doesn't just travel, it lingers. The long, empty corridors amplify the isolation of the shift, making every small noise feel like an intrusion. At first, I assumed it was a recording, a soft, continuous loop left playing on a hidden speaker somewhere behind the heavy oak. But the physical reality of the building makes that impossible. The deadbolt is engaged, the seals are unbroken, the key never left my belt. Yet the sound persists, night after night. The prayer has a specific, unsettling cadence. It is calm and steady, lacking the frantic energy or desperation you might expect from a midnight plea. When I finally worked up the courage to press my ear against the wood, the true nature of the sound became clear. It wasn't a single person, it was a multitude of voices, all whispering the exact same prayer in a state of perfect, terrifying synchronization. Human voices usually carry natural variations, a slight stumble in timing or a pause for breath. This chorus had none of that. It moved with a precision that felt entirely devoid of human error. The next night, it happened again. Exactly 2:46 a.m., the same acoustic pattern vibrating through the door. But then the pattern broke. One specific voice detached itself from the synchronized group, growing louder and seemingly closer with every syllable. The spatial origin of the sound shifted. It was no longer muffled behind the wood. The voice was now whispering directly next to me in the hallway. I turned around immediately. The corridor was empty. The dim overhead lights flickered, but no one was there. The physical barrier of the door had been rendered useless. Even without being opened, it had failed to contain whatever was inside. A sudden movement at the door handle pulled my attention back to the entrance of the chapel. The heavy, antique handle began to depress, moving slowly and mechanically as if being operated by a hand I couldn't see. The lock didn't break. The bolts simply slid back, and the heavy door swung inward slowly. I should have run. Instead, I found myself paralyzed by a strange, irrational curiosity. I reached out and pushed the door the rest of the way open. Everything about the movement felt like a formal invitation. The space was open now, and whatever had been praying was waiting for me to cross the threshold. The darkness inside the chapel had an oppressive physical weight. It seemed to actively push back against the light, looking more like a solid wall. The moment the door was fully open, the synchronized whispering stopped instantly. The silence was absolute. In the center of the room, a figure was kneeling. It was covered in dark cloth, but its proportions were deeply wrong. It was far too tall and thin to be human. I whispered a hello, and the figure responded by finishing the prayer alone. Its voice carried a guttural, alien tone that vibrated in my chest. Then it acknowledged me. Without moving its torso or its limbs, its head twisted backward over its shoulder, rotating past the point where a neck should have snapped. I couldn't see its face. There was only a void of darkness where features should have been, marked by two pale, hazy shapes where the eyes should be. As the entity stood, its limbs moved with an agonizing, heavy delay, as if dragging its body through deep water at normal speed. It spoke, but the sound didn't hit my ears. The words formed directly inside my mind, clear and cold. A sudden wave of disorientation hit me. I realized the door behind me was now shut, and I was no longer at the entrance. I was standing directly in front of the kneeling figure. The proximity brought a radiating cold and a heavy sense of emptiness. The figure leaned forward until its face was inches from mine. It gave one final command: pray with us. Then the lights in the chapel went out. In the total darkness, the synchronized whispers returned, and as they did, I could hear my own voice joined with them, perfectly in sync with the others. If you ever hear that prayer behind a locked door, do not listen. Acknowledging the sound is the first step. I tried to stop praying. It didn't let me. I don't remember finishing the prayer, only realizing my mouth was moving on its own. I was in a room with no lights and no windows, complete darkness, but I could still see in a way. The shadows looked thicker than the walls, pulsing with a weight I could feel against my skin. And I wasn't alone. I could feel dozens of them around me, kneeling in the dark. Their whispers were perfectly in sync with mine, a steady, rhythmic echo of every word I spoke. I tried to close my mouth, but the words kept coming. They weren't starting at my lips. They were being generated from deep inside my chest and forced out, completely bypassing my will. Something touched my shoulder. It was cold and light, but it froze me where I stood. Right next to my ear, it whispered, "Don't stop." When I tried to resist, the prayer shifted. My voice slowed and deepened, twisting into something much heavier. Instantly, every voice in the room changed with me, matching the new distortion perfectly. They weren't forcing me to follow them. They were following me. Every time my voice changed, theirs changed. Every time I paused, they paused. For a second, I saw them. Their faces were stretched, their eyes hollow, and their mouths were held open too wide. They weren't people anymore. They were just vessels for the sound. I looked toward the front of the room and saw a single empty space. Without realizing it, my body began moving on its own, stepping toward the center, toward the exact spot where the system wanted me to lead. I don't remember leaving the chapel, but suddenly I was outside in the morning light. Everything looked normal, the cars, the commuters, but the prayer was still humming inside my head, soft and constant. Then a stranger passed me, and I heard it. Under their breath, they were whispering the exact same words I was thinking. I stopped and turned, but they kept walking. Then I heard it again from someone else. Another whisper, the same rhythm. The prayer was layering itself across the crowd, person by person. The crowd began matching my pace. Every person hit the pavement at the exact same millisecond I did, their breathing locked to my own lungs. I whispered, "Stop," to see what would happen. Instantly, every person near me froze. The city fell into a heavy, unnatural silence, where nothing moved and no one spoke. The world wasn't just reacting to me, it had become a physical extension of me. When I turned my head, hundreds of heads turned in the same direction at the exact same time. I felt the moment the connection crossed the city limits. It wasn't a sound, it was a shift in my chest, as millions of minds suddenly synced into the same frequency. It moved into the technology. Digital screens instantly flickered, and phones lit up in pockets, all of them broadcasting the echoed voices from places I couldn't see. I tried to refuse. I stayed silent, and for 1 second, the entire world went quiet with me. Millions of people just stood there, waiting. The voice didn't come from behind me this time. It came from inside the air itself. It told me to say it again, and I realized I was no longer being controlled. I was choosing to participate. I spoke the command, and the world answered. The chorus returned stronger than before, echoing through every street and every building in a perfectly controlled loop. Every person on the planet was a single glowing coordinate on a vast geometric lattice. millions of distinct points, plotted in the same darkness. All those individual points snapped inward, collapsing their boundaries to form one dense, pulsing hub, with me at the center. The structure was now complete. We were no longer individuals. We were the components of a single massive voice, one large enough to dictate how the physical world operates. Reality began to hesitate. There was a delay between my actions and the world's response, as if the environment was struggling to render my movements in real time. The skyline began to soften. Concrete buildings bent and rippled like they were breathing, and the sky folded inward, no longer above us. People stopped looking at me and started looking through me. I wasn't the center of the system anymore. I had dissolved into just another gear in the machine. Walking became impossible. I could take a dozen steps, but the buildings beside me wouldn't move an inch. Every point in the city had become the same point, fused into a single, static location. The prayer stopped. The world fell into a silence that felt final, as if there was nothing left to sync and nothing left to control. Then I heard something new, a voice that wasn't part of the system and wasn't part of me. It sounded distant and confused. It just said, "Hello?" I tried to turn, and for a moment, I saw you. Someone sitting in another dimension, staring at a screen and listening to this exact confession. This wasn't a story about the end of my world. It was a transmission signal. And by listening to it, you've just repeated the first words of the prayer in yours.